I've been asked to sum up, which after 12 speakers, 12 experts, trying to distill their words into sort of a little set of bullet points is a sort of, I think it's a suicide pact, frankly. I'm going to get laid into over lunch, I know. But I have been writing things down furiously as we've been listening this morning. And I've learned one new word, actually, which is a verb I don't use, which is ideate. Yeah? I bet you don't either. We've learned other words too and used them. Disruption, planning, experimentation, experience, empathy, learning, creative confidence, connection, and reverse mentoring. Now, what I've tried to do here is I've tried to sort of start with this thing the thing I mentioned earlier, the model that MIT used, which is a sort of cyclical or spiral model of improvement and reflection and development. And NASA, as I mentioned, used one. And what's very interesting today is that Phil produced one too. He used the sequence of words were understand, explore, prototype, and evaluate. Thank you, Phil, I got that right. Thank you. Meanwhile, okay, MIT's model is sort of similar. Research, discuss, stroke model, prototype, and then feedback. Yeah? And more or less the same. And then we listen to Jason, which is, should we call this the Stanford model? Yeah, go on. Which was insights, ideation, business case. I like that because it puts it in the business world. Yeah. Proof of concept. CEOs like that as well. Build, test, launch, sustain. Yeah. So it's a longer model, but it's the same process. The interesting thing about all these models is that they're really the same. They're just some of the stages are broken down or concretized, but really it's the same process. Now, how can that work for you running a business with 200 or 5,000 employees in Ireland? I'm going to tell you because and you may, and I don't want any interruptions. But you can have a go at me afterwards. All right. So this is what I think just about I've got out of today. I've got 4 or 5 major facts, some of which I think are questionable, but I'm going to go with them. Design translates innovation into commerciality. It comes out to that IRO point, you know, the innovation return on investment. Okay? So design-based companies earn more money. It's an interesting point. Secondly, you employ a designer, for every €1 you spend on them, that generates €4 in profit. I think it's a fantastic statistic. I can't quite believe it. It's a good one. It's a good one. Okay, let's go with it. Employing a designer generates 30 other jobs. I can believe that. The creative industries are a powerhouse of generation and industry. What's exciting here is that there's going to be a white paper on design. So you're going to find design at the center of the culture of policy. And I cannot stress how strongly I agree with that. I've just written to the planning minister in the UK complaining about the lack of design policy in central government. Much more interesting than counting beans, I think, as well. And education is absolutely critical as part of that. And I think that flows from that cultural change that happens when you put design at the center of policy. Right now, I've also got, you don't need to write all of these down, but I wouldn't mind if some of you wrote some of them down. You may not have covered all the bases, and I think I've covered pretty well most of them here. And I've collaborated with 1 or 2 individuals as well, just to make sure. Okay, right, so here's my kind of 14 bullet point sequence of things you have to do now when you go back into your office, apart from tear the wall down, is 1, it's an important one, find time to think. I don't care whether it happens in the bath or on the golf course or in the car. You need time to think. You need time to think and reflect and absorb. And you need to allow your team to do the same thing. That was a very important, critical point, I thought, right at the beginning. Find time. Secondly, you need to build your team like a cake. You've got to add the grist to the mill. You've got to add the salt and pepper. You cannot just fill a room with yes people. This is a very clear point earlier, I thought we got from Tom, which was see your workforce as a resource for creative thinking. Make sure that they are empowered, that they feel that they can speak up, that they can take the plunge and really say what they believe. Yeah? And I suppose there's a point here for Ireland, it's a point you made before, Danny, is that we're losing a lot of creatives in this country through the recession. They've gone to work elsewhere, and it's actually very important to bring them back as part of that new design culture and make that contribution. Next, I think, listen to the voice of your consumer, and that came through again and again, most lately from Jason. Reach past what they say and observe. I thought that was a really interesting point we learned earlier, is that it isn't just good enough to listen to them because they might be lying or they might be coming at you from a limited knowledge base. Actually observe them and study them to understand what their needs are so that you can service that. Use playbacks. Great term. I always knew them as crits. In the design industry, Brian, yeah, thank you, Ali, yeah, everybody uses this thing called a crit. So in your design practice or your architectural practice, everybody comes together once a week and teams present their work to each other, not as presentations and not as you say, not as PowerPoints or in abstract, but just to show them their work. And they take criticism from everybody on an equal footing. Doesn't matter whether it's the chief exec or the cleaner, they all have a right to express a view and to criticize that work. And it's a very important collaborative process, hugely important in any company because, as you say, Phil, it breaks down silos and breaks down the hierarchy. Really, really important process. Mixed technology and humanity. I don't know how many times we've heard that today, but that humanity thing, really important. We're all people, we're all individuals, we all speak a language we all understand and empathize with each other through that language and other forms of communication, like drawing, that we were learning from earlier, and I thought that was a really important thing, Johnny. And in so doing, of course, to remember to use just ordinary language, not the specialist language. Experiment fast and cheap. No one's going to contradict Edison. And disrupt the process in the early stages, And then remember, of course, to crit or play back again. So in those early design stages, a lot of taking apart and putting together again. But don't forget to disrupt and dismantle and then rebuild it. And then trial. I thought it was a really interesting point we learned. It's obvious when you think about it. Trial with user groups. Don't just stick it out in the market and wait to see what people say and do. Just work with small groups of real customers and people and friends and colleagues to see what the response is. Trialing with your consumer group is a form of critting, and it should be seen as much. And playbacking. Should we call it that? Yeah. You prefer that? It's got more letters in it than crit. But yeah, you call it playback, right? Maybe change the physical environment for your design teams for their work so that they can move freely and do that thing we saw at IBM, which I thought was interesting, if not expensive. Make your design team report directly to the exec. I think that's a really important one. Design can't be lost in middle management, needs to report directly to the board, directly to you. Understand some of the processes and ideas are formal, and understand that some of them are informal, and they need equal respect within the structure of your organization. Design for growth. As an important point that came out of some of the earlier pieces that we heard, this idea about planning forward, and it's inevitable that any business that wants to employ design wants to grow, but to plan and actually to brief the design team to accept that and to plan that their work has to accept growth it seems to me to be an important point. Well, two more. Creative thinking will lead to innovation, but also to efficiencies. Don't be surprised if your waste stream becomes a new resource. It can make you money. Really, and I think actually we heard a lot, not just from Estelle, but from many of our speakers. And this is the one that actually I've got a very small team in my business, and we're all grey-haired pretty well. And I'm gonna take this one with me and really put it to good practice. I'm going to employ 2 mentors who are half my age because they are my future market. I think it's a really, really important point. I'm going to finish now. It's lunchtime. I want to thank all the 12 speakers we've had today. It's been an extraordinary, rather great little adventure, actually, we've had today. And I hope it's left a lasting impression on you. I also want to thank our sponsors, PwC, 3, CNBC, and ID 2015. I want to particularly thank Danny and Ibec for hosting this because I think it's a brave and powerful thing to do here. And so I hope you're all able to take something away and have found today very fruitful as I have. Thanks for coming, and thank you, everyone.